Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are, and welcome to Bedry Trades. Today, we're joined with the legend, Gareth Soloway. Gareth, welcome back to my channel, my friend.
Oh, thank you for having me back. It's great to see you.
Gareth, massive pump in Bitcoin and the crypto market over the last 2-3 weeks. Will it continue? That's on everyone's mind. Will this pump continue?
Yeah, so one of the keys here is that we actually do have in the near term here sideways chop, which is known as a bullish consolidation pattern. And so realistically, there is still a chance for a little bit more upside. I would say upside to about 25,000. That's what kind of I'm looking at. But after that, I would be very cautious about continuing to look for upside. So for me, at least, I'm in a position where for me, I would even start to look to short it around 25,000 if it gets up there.
I was actually looking at the graph, and the 25,000 is around the 200-week moving average, give or take. It's the 24/7, but it's probably gonna wick up, sort of thing. So, like you usually tell me, am I right to think that?
Yes, absolutely. And I'm not sure if I can show my screen here, but
Of course
if
you
you can
can.
add it to the stream, but I'll show you here. So this is where Bitcoin is right now. So you had this kind of FTX collapse here. Then it went basically into sleep mode. It was in hibernation. We had the breakout, the melt up. It took us right back to that pivot high here. We then broke through it, and this is now beginning to form that consolidation pattern again, which is bullish in the near term. And so what I would think is that you might have one more push up to this high right here, which is also this low over here. And then that's where you're going to meet a lot of resistance on the chart. And so for me, yeah, I think there's a decent chance of at least one more pump on Bitcoin. But then again, I think once we get there, we could actually see a significant sell-off.
All right. So in general, where do you stand? Like after this pump, let's say we reach 24, you're still bearish. You think we're in a descending pattern or trend?
Yeah, so for me, I am. I'm still in the camp that if you zoom out on this chart, right? So this move here is almost very reminiscent of this move to here, or this down low to up here. So in the scheme of where we were at the all-time highs at 69,000, this is still a relatively small move. Now, the media, a lot of people out there will tell you, oh, it's 50%, 40% off of its lows, which is true. But that's looking at it in a very micro standpoint. You have to look at it at the bigger picture, and it's still way, way down here. And again, great bounce. But to me, this isn't a new bull market starting, especially when the Fed isn't showing signs of going back to the money printer.
The thing that caught my eye is there's two things I'm focusing on. Is that 200-week moving average, to be honest, myself, and there was a trend line I drew. If you draw it from the 69 to the second top to there, it broke that trend line, or is it? It's roughly on it now.
Is it this one?
Yeah.
Right there. Yeah, so you did break above this downsloping trend line, absolutely. Just keep in mind, downsloping trend lines, when they break above, it doesn't necessarily give us a for sure bottom. A great example of this would be this chart of Baidu, right? So Baidu is one of the biggest Chinese companies here.
Alibaba, I know Alibaba, yeah.
Yep. So Alibaba, excuse me. Yep. And then you could see this downsloping trend line hit here, it hit here, it hit here, and it broke out. And then this is what I would just be a little careful of. It went up and then it went whoops and it made a new low here. And then it finally bottomed out. So this is kind of my playbook for what I'm expecting on Bitcoin, is that I do think we've gotten this breakout of that downsloping trend like you're saying. I just think there's probably one more flush to scare people. I was saying this just a little while ago to someone else, is that I've never seen a bear market end where bullish sentiment rebounded so quickly. Like, again, you go on Twitter, you would think Bitcoin's at 69,000 already.
No, I agree. It's extreme. Like I actually shorted I did a couple of shorts last couple of days because of that.
Nice.
Just pure sentiment. It's crazy. Look, I'm gonna come back to the Bitcoin chart. I want to just speak a little bit macro. Inflation is actually now going down in the States. So it's 6.5. And we know state leads the whole world with everything. Whatever happens there affects the whole world.
Yep.
So it reached 6.5 down from 7.1. So the trajectory is looking downwards. Then you have the states reaching the 31 trillion debt ceiling. And Yellen, I'm going to share a screen if I can for a second. I'm going to share share my screen for 1 second. So inflation reached 6.5, and then you have Yellen saying that she wants to remove the debt ceiling altogether.
Yeah.
Now, I thought Yellen is just because it's now they're in a weird position. But I checked this article; it's from 30th of September 2021. She wanted to remove the debt ceiling, so it's not something new that she. So with all this happening, the debt ceiling, the dollar weakening, the inflation going down, isn't this a great case for the market to continue going up and maybe start, like, if the debt ceiling is out, the money printer will be back on. So that's my attitude. But isn't that a great?
My biggest concern over that is that we know inflation is coming down, but the Fed won't be looking to cut rates and turn the money printing on until we're probably below 2%. We're around 2% on inflation. And my worry is that it's going to take us a long time to get here. So remember the initial, when we went from 10 or 9% down to, let's say, even 4% inflation, that's the quick drop. It's that last little bit that usually is so hard to get. So my guess is we get to 3%, and then inflation gets real sticky there. And I worry that could make a roadblock for the Fed to start printing again, even if we slip into a recession. And again, that's kind of the scary scenario is do we get into a recession, and is inflation low enough for the Fed to turn on the money printing again? And again, I don't know if that's going to be the case. I would somewhat doubt it.
Can I ask you something? Again, I don't live in the States, but the way inflation is calculated, the consumer, the CPI and the inflation, doesn't it count previous year? It takes a year before. It's usually 2 years, but they're changing the rule to make it 1 year. So if we go back now we're carrying the weight of the good years pretty much before. But once we drop those off, wouldn't it drop substantially?
Yes, that's where you'd have to assume it goes back to kind of in that 2%, 3%, 4% range. So you're 100% right, is that, every number we get on inflation is looking at this month plus the last 12 months. And so it is a lagging indicator in that respect. But again, that's why it's not going to be a surprise to see inflation come down. The question will be is, does it get down to 2 or below 2% where the Fed feels comfortable about printing money again?
Okay, all right, that's good to know. Now, my other question is for you. Last time you were on this show, you told us that you were looking at 9K for your target for your Bitcoin. Now, again, I'm gonna share my screen. I was under. It's never gonna go under 10. That was my attitude, to be honest. Obviously, you're a way better chartist than I am, but with my limited thing, I compared it. If you notice here where we are now. And correct me if I'm wrong. This is the trend line that I have. We touched it here, then consolidation. Now we touched it back here. If I go back to, give me a second. All right, there. To the bear market of 2015, for example, it shows me very, very similar situations. So touched it here, consolidated, touched it here. Then we had a retest, I would say, to the lows. It's not like a new low, a retest before we started going up. Can this play out?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, that could play out. Again, for me, it's a matter of letting the charts tell us, right? So you're right that looks very, very similar. If we do come back to the lows, that's going to be the big test, right? So let's say we retest 16-ish thousand at some point in the next couple months. Does it break or does it hold? If you notice in that scenario, it looks like it made a higher low, right? There was a higher low there. So that would be something that I would be watching for, is does it make a higher low? In which case that's a bullish move, right? When you get higher lows. If it were to come down and make a lower low, that would be very concerning.
Okay, all right. For me, I looked at both, and they're like extremely similar. What's happened then? Obviously, the price range is different. I wish I can get a $300 Bitcoin, but it's not going to happen anytime soon. But it looks extremely similar.
Yeah, and I think the wild cards people have to keep in mind is that, like, the question is there another FTX out there? Maybe not, hopefully not. And then also, what does regulation bring forth? And again, ultimately, I think regulation is going to be a positive for the industry. But I think that you still have to recognize when it's debuted, when it's first talked about, is it going to cause panic among the alts? Like, what kind of hoops are there for them to jump through? And does that then cause a panic sell-off? Now, Bitcoin, we know, is a commodity, so it should be immune to that somewhat. but I do worry about some of the alts in terms of the regulation that could come down.
I think the next leg down would be most probably be alts, because of regulations. So that's the main thing I would believe, because regulation is coming and CBDC is coming whether we like it or not. The FTX debacle, everywhere in the world you see regulation. So I think this year is the year of the regulation. That's for sure. You mentioned commodities. Are you still bullish on commodities?
Yes, in fact, gold. So this is interesting on gold. Gold has had a monster run since November of 2022. We know that the dollar topped out right around there. If I flip over to the DXY, look at the top on the dollar, the decline here, and then look at ultimately what gold did. It basically went the opposite way. Now, in the very short term, I think gold is too overbought for me. So I'm not out there saying, hey, everyone should be buying gold this second. What I would say is look for a pullback, and the pullback maybe 1865, maybe down to 1800. But then on pullbacks, absolutely, I think gold again is going to be hand in hand with Bitcoin in the future. Obviously, gold is the physical, and then Bitcoin is the digital version of it. And so, if you ask me midterm to long term, very bullish on gold. Just near term, it's had such a run, kind of like crypto, where 100%. It's like, you know what, let me wait for it to pull back, and then I'll buy it on a pullback.
Like Bitcoin at the moment as well, a large pull-ups. A question for you on another trade that I'm considering. So with the US refusing to drill oil and China opening again, would there be a play on natural gas and crude oil?
Yes, absolutely. So crude oil is a little trickier, right? I wonder about a recession. Crude oil, again, is off of its highs substantially. It's into a little resistance here. I still could see one more dip on oil down to $65 a barrel. But my guess is that's going to be a floor for the 2023 year. Natural gas, though, I've actually been accumulating natural gas on the long side. We're just into this major support area. There's so much support down here. It is an oversold chart. We know that hedge funds and institutions and retail way too bullish up here when it was all about Europe and what was going to happen in the winter for Europe. Now they're all dumping, which is causing a reverse kind of sell, right? So here you had everyone rally, buying it and going crazy and hyping it. Now you're in the opposite scenario. I do think, again, this is closer to a bottom than not. And I do think we'll have a snapback at some point. So I like natural gas. Oil, I'm a little bit more neutral on until it gets to $65 a barrel.
Oh, that's great. Let's go back to Bitcoin for a second. Give me your future prediction. So you said you're expecting it. Maybe we have a leg up till 24, 25K. Where's after that? Where do you see it after that?
So I think this will be, if we do get that leg up, and again, there's a question mark here, but I think right now the chart is telling us that consolidation is bullish, so it's favoring the upside. I think once you get to 25K, that's where I would start to look for a bigger reversal back down. And like in your example, maybe we come down and kind of get close to the $16,000 level again. We have to see then, does it hold or not? I'm still in the camp that we haven't made the lows yet. So I still think that we could go to 12 to 13,000 and then potentially 9 before it fully bottoms out. But basically, I would say once you hit 25, for me, I'll turn majorly bearish on Bitcoin.
When you're talking about maybe 9, that it's a worst case scenario, I'm assuming 9. If it's the worst case scenario, what's the time frame for that low that you think between 12 or 14 to 9, whatever the range that you think it's going to be the lows there? Where do you think the time frame is looking like?
Yeah, originally I was looking at May or June. It still may be there, but that's obviously approaching very quickly. We're almost at the end of January. But I would think this year, I think this year with the rollout of legislation, I think wherever that legislation finally gets hammered out, wherever Bitcoin is right around there is probably close to the lows. So I would think this year that low is put in. If it doesn't happen this year, I'd be somewhat surprised if it does happen.
Okay. How long do you think this bear market will last?
I think that the bear market probably lasts throughout this year overall. I think that once we get into 2024, you probably have a little bit more, at least with Bitcoin, it becomes like that alternative to stocks where it starts going against the asset, risk on, risk off. So when there's risk off in the markets, in the stock market, you might get risk on in Bitcoin as the regulation creates trust in the crypto sphere. So I think this year you have that bottom being put in. And again, I think you could have a major run by 2024 to 2025.
You mentioned stocks, tech stocks especially. We saw a bit of a pullback in them, but is that enough, you reckon, or we have still a major down?
No, I'm still in the camp that we haven't even seen the real bear market yet in stocks. And again, one of the things I'm keeping an eye on, you have this downtrend. We still haven't made a higher high, low, high, lower high, lower high, lower high, and lower high. So I'm watching very closely, but I'm going to guess that we have a bigger rollover. And in the very least, to me, it makes a lot of sense. We need to go and test this pre-COVID high, right? And again, if you think about the money the Fed is pulling out, they're trying to pull out so much money. In fact, interest rates are even higher now than they were going into COVID. So if that's the case, we should be sucking all the money out of the system, and you would at least see the markets retest that high. I even think this year we could get down to this lower level here on the S&P, which would take us to about 3,000.
That would be deadly to crypto, to be honest.
That's my bear case for why. If crypto is going to go to 9 or even 12 or 13, my bear case is it's not another FTX scenario. It's more likely that risk assets take a major dump.
Yeah. Let me share my screen. Keep your screen there. I want to ask you one question there, but you mentioned about the money supply. I'm going to share Charlie Bilelio shared this 1 second. Let me make it bigger for you to see it. This is the money supply over the last, I don't know, since 1959. And if you notice, every year the money supply increases a little bit, but 2020, 2021, it increased by 37%. Now, 2022, the quantitative tightening started with the Fed. The reduction was 1.3%, and it caused a major crash in pretty much everything.
Yeah.
Now, my question for you is, in 2023, the rumors or the Fed's aim is to the tightening will be a bit more than negative 1.3. It's going to be negative, I think, 2 or 3%. Is that where you're the bearish in the stock market? Is it because of that aspect?
Yeah, that's the core of it, 100%. So if the Fed is going to keep interest rates, let's say around 5% on the Fed funds, even if they stop hiking, there's an implication, there's a result of that. And remember that when the Fed was printing money for the last since 2009, everyone always said, hey, don't fight the Fed. Don't fight the Fed. You got to just buy stocks, buy risk assets because the Fed is printing money. Well, you can't say don't fight the Fed on the way up, but then on the way down say, oh, let's fight the Fed, right? So my thought process is the same thing. Is it very simple? If you weren't supposed to fight them on the way up, don't fight them on the way down as they're sucking money out of the system. And that's where it comes in. And again, I don't think the markets are factoring in, at least the stock market, not factoring in the potential of a recession, how deep a recession, how long of a recession it could be, how the Fed may be handcuffed because inflation could remain slightly higher than they feel comfortable with to kind of go back to printing. So there's a lot of potential black swan issues out there for the markets.
Okay, that's great. If we go back to your screen, the trend line that you have from Tom, the declining trend line, didn't it break it towards the end, Gareth? I know usually one candle or two is okay, but this is the third candle there. Do you think that's a breakout or what?
Yeah, so when I look at this, right, so this hasn't confirmed yet, but this could be a breakout, right? So you closed above, you didn't close above at a higher high, nor did you here yet. And again, the market's still trading. We still have about an hour left in the trading day, but I'm watching this closely. If we break and confirm outside of this, then you're going to head back to 410, which would be your previous top. And that would be your next stage of resistance. Now, again, the question is this a fake out or a real breakout? And right now it's unconfirmed. So I'm watching very, very closely to see what that shows us.
Gareth, always a pleasure. Thank you. Thanks for having me. I have one question from the community. He keeps on asking it to me. Any recommendation for a book to read about TA and fundamentals? He's asking you specifically.
I would pick up a basic TA book. I would say, I'm sure there's textbooks out there, the basic formations and so forth. That's kind of laying the groundwork. And then at some point, check out verifiedinvestingeducation.com. That's where I created a 20-hour series of educational content. Definitely worth kind of keeping an eye on. And again, that's verifiedinvestingeducation.com.
Actually, we should talk offline about that. I spoke to Curry about it briefly. I think there's an opportunity there, but we'll talk offline about it. Thanks again, Gareth. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Good to have you. We'll talk soon.
I look forward to it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.